Hello everyone, my name is Diego and welcome to Cyber Tutorials. In this video, we're going to be diving into the fascinating world of Fortinet firewalls, specifically staging and setting up basic internet access. This video is targeted for both beginners and seasoned network warriors. Now, whether you're a home user protecting your precious cat videos or a security architect securing an enterprise network, Fortinet firewalls are powerful tools. But before you unleash their full potential, proper staging is crucial. Think of it as building a strong foundation for your digital fortress. In this video series, this is going to be the topology that we will be working on. Now, I am using EvenG to simulate this topology. The topology consists of one Windows 10 virtual machine, one Layer 2 virtual switch, and one Fortinet virtual firewall. We will have one uplink to the internet, which will be used to simulate internet usage. Now, I want to point out that if you are using a physical FortiGate firewall to follow along with this video series, the same steps will apply. However, you may not have a switch in between your computer and the FortiGate. If you do not have a switch, just go ahead and directly connect your Windows machine or computer to one of the ports on the FortiGate firewall. Okay, so what do I need? You're going to need either one of two things, depending on how you're going to connect to your FortiGate for the first time. On the left is a console cable, and on the right is an Ethernet cable. Both can be used to access the FortiGate for the first time. The left you will be plugging into the console connection, and the right one you'll be plugging into the management port if your FortiGate has one. Now, you may be asking yourself, what do I do with these cables and where do I plug them in? For your first option, which is CLI, it's going to be a console cable. Your console cable, you're going to want to plug in the Ethernet tip into the port labeled console and the USB tip into your machine. Your second step is going to want to get some type of software like PuTTY. You're going to want to change your settings on PuTTY to COM4, serial, and your speed for 9600. Once you click open, this will open up a CLI terminal, which will then give you access to the FortiGate. Your second option, which is going to give you direct access to the GUI, is going to be with your Ethernet cable. This Ethernet cable does not need to go into the console cable, but instead into one of the LAN ports here. The other end will go into your machine. Once you do this, you need to go into your network adapter settings and change your IP address to something in the 192.168.1/24 subnet. Once you do that, you're going to want to go to 192.168.1.99 in your web browser, which will then open up the FortiGate GUI. Okay guys, so once we go ahead and open up PuTTY, we will be prompted with this login page. By default, the credentials for FortiGates is admin with no password. So we'll type in admin and we'll just hit enter again. So now it's going to ask us to choose a new password. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Confirm it. Now there's a couple things we need to do here. For our ports, port 2 is going to be our LAN facing interface, whereas port 1 will be our WAN facing interface. So if you do not already have a subnet chosen for your LAN, you can just go ahead and copy the one I'm using. So it's going to be 10.10.10/24 with .1 being the default gateway for the LAN. Okay, so once we log into the FortiGate CLI, we want to type in show sysint ? And this will give us a brief overview of our IP addresses, our states on our interfaces. As you can see, port 2, which is our LAN facing interface, does not have an IP address, so we need to fix that because this will be the IP address when we want to hit the GUI. This will be what we will be entering in our web browser. Port 1, however, does have an IP address. This IP address is a private address, but it's in my lab network. And I have a router in there that does all the NATing and all the rules, which allows me to go out to the internet. So what we want to do is fix port 2 for now, because this will be, like I said, what we will be connecting to in order to manage on the GUI. So what we want to do is type in configure sys int. This will bring us to interface configuration. If we type in show here, you can see we have the physical configuration of our interfaces. So port 1, the mode is DHCP, so it picked up the DHCP address from my lab subnet. Allow access means these are the administrative protocols that are allowed on this interface. So if you were to go to this IP, you could ping it, you could go on HTTPS, you could SSH, HTTPS. However, port 2, as you can see, is pretty much empty. So what we want to do is type in edit port 2. This will bring us into port 2's interface configuration. What we want to do from here is type in set. And if we type in question mark, it's going to give us all of the options and configurations that we can do on here. For this video, we're just going to be focusing on 2. Actually 3 of them. First one is going to be mode. The second one is going to be the IP. And the third one is going to be allow access. So we want to do set mode static set IP 10.10.10.1/24 as we decided as our LAN subnet. Now you can adjust this to your environment. We want to set allow access only to HTTPS and SSH, and we'll allow ping as well. From here, we want to do next. Want to do next and type in end. Since we did not configure any type of DHCP, what we will have to do on the Windows machine is manually assign us an IP address in the subnet so we can go ahead and hit this. So we'll go ahead and go there now. Okay, so as you can see, I've assigned my IP address to something in that /24 subnet with 10.10.10.1, which is port 2's IP address as my gateway. So what we will do now is open Microsoft Edge. We will go to HTTPS 10.10.10.1. And as you can see, we're going to get an invalid certificate warning. This is okay because we don't have any certificates on the FortiGate. So what we will do is click advanced and continue. We are now on the FortiGate GUI. So what we want to do is type in admin and type in our password. And now we are on the box. We will click on begin just to go ahead and do some initial FortiGate setup. We'll change our host name just to FortiGate 1. And for our dashboard, we'll just do optimal. We'll click don't show again. Now here we are at the dashboard. To make this easier on my eyes, we're going to go to System, Settings, we're going to scroll down here, and we're going to change our theme to dark matter, which, like I said, it's just going to be a lot easier on my eyes. While we're in here, we're going to enable Central SNAP, so just toggle that. And then we'll just go back to our dashboard. Okay, so in order to get basic internet access, there's 3 things we want to configure. RNR, routing, NATing, and rules. Our routing is going to allow the FortiGate to properly do its networking and send the traffic out of the correct interface using the proper route. This can either be done statically or dynamic. For this video, we'll be using static. For NATing, we're going to be using Central SNAP. And once we go into the configuration of that, I'll go a little bit more in detail on why we chose that. And for our rules, we want to make sure we're accepting the proper flows and denying what we don't need to go through the FortiGate. So first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to click on network, and we're going to go to our interfaces. We have to set up a couple zones here. So first thing we want to do is before we actually even go into the zones, we want to fix some things here. So if we go to port 1, we want to disable SSH, HTTP, HTTPS, and Fortinet Manager access. We want to change our role to WAN, and we'll click OK. We're going to click on our LAN facing port, which is port 2, and we'll just change our role to LAN. We're going to want to also enable DHCP server here. We're going to change our scope to start at 50. Our default gate will be the same as the interface IP, which is going to be port 2. And our DNS server will be the same as the system DNS, which will be FortiGuard. We'll click OK. It's going to tell us that one admin session is currently connected on this interface. It won't necessarily disconnect us because we're already in the sub interface. I'm not in the sub interface, I mean in this subnet. So we'll just click OK. Okay. So with that done, next thing we want to do is we want to create some zones. So we'll click create new zone, and we'll name this LAN. We're going to disable block intrazone traffic. And for interface members, we're going to click port 2, which is our LAN facing port. We'll do LAN facing. We're going to also create one for the WAN, port 1, and we'll do WAN facing. Okay, now what this is going to allow you to do is if in the future you have a ton of firewall rules, rather than going into the firewall and having to change the interface in every single rule, you can now just go into the zone and add or remove members to the LAN. And on the rule side, specify the LAN, specify the zone rather than the interface. So this is going to allow you to have a lot of room for expansion. So once this is done, the second thing we're going to want to do is start to configure our policy objects. So we'll go to policy, we'll click on firewall policy, and this is where we're going to essentially start to deny or accept traffic. In the top right, we're going to want to click by sequence. We're also going to want to click here on this little gear here. We're going to want to enable hit count and last used and click apply. We're going to create a new rule here. For our name, we're just going to do inside to out. Now here is where you're going to select the zone rather than the interface. So our LAN will be our incoming and our WAN will be our outgoing. In your source, since we don't actually have a subnet referencing the LAN address, we're going to click on create new address, and for our name we'll do LAN subnet. For our type we'll do subnet, and for an IP mask we'll do our LAN. For our interface we will do LAN, and we'll click OK. We want to now select the new object we created, which is now highlighted in orange. For our destination, we're just going to click all. The reason for all is because we don't have, the internet's a big place, right? So unless you want to only allow to, for example, to Microsoft or something, then you could do that. But in this case, we'll just do all. And this will essentially mean, anything that's not specified, so any internet traffic. For our service, we're also going to do all. And for action, we're going to go ahead and accept. Now, if we did not enable central SNAP, we would have to do our natting from the rule, from the firewall rule itself. Now, if you have a lot of natting rules and a lot of firewall rules, now this could start to turn into a nightmare from a management perspective. So this is going to allow you to have that flexibility. We're not going to enable any security profile or any UTM inspection. The reason for that is I want to save that for another video. For our logging options, we're going to allow all sessions just for troubleshooting and educational purposes. And we're going to also enable. We'll go ahead and click OK. So as you can see now, we have one rule here, which is specifying traffic coming from the LAN, which has port 2 as a member, going to the WAN zone, which has port 1 as a member, the source being our LAN here, and the destination being all, which means the internet. NATing will be applied via central SNAP, and we're not going to be doing any type of security profile or UTM. As you can see, from when we clicked this to configure and select some more columns to show here, we can see that we now have hit count and last used. What this is going to allow you to do is when you're creating a new rule, it's going to allow you to verify that that rule is actually being hit, and it is configured correctly by how many times it's being hit and when it was last used. Okay, so now that we have R and R, or we have R, we don't have the N yet, we want to go to the NATing. Now, as you can see, if you look at your firewall policy and your central SNAT, they look very similar, and that is because they're going to be configured in a similar way based off the flow of traffic. So we'll go ahead and also click on this gear here, and we're just going to do last used, and it already has hit count. We'll click create new. For our incoming interface, we're going to click LAN. Outgoing, we'll do WAN. Our source address, we will do our LAN subnet, and our destination will be all. As you can see, it's very similar to the rule we created in our firewall policy. The only difference now is that if you had specific NATs for a specific source address in your LAN, you would need 2 different firewall policies, whereas now you can do all your NATing from one central place here and separate your firewall rules and your NATs. For our NATing, we're going to use PAT, and we're just going to overload everything to our outgoing interface address, which is going to be that lab subnet that I have, and we're also going to enable. Okay, so next thing we want to do is we want to take care of our routing. So we want to go to network, and again, if you want to configure dynamic routing, you can go ahead and do so. We'll cover that in another video where we will go over OSPF and BGP, but for now we'll do static routing. We currently don't have any static routes configured, so we need to create a default route. Our default route is represented by all zeros, and for the interface, what you're going to have to do here is select the interface itself rather than the zone here. So just click port 1. Since this IP address on the interface is being learned via DHCP, I have the option to just pull the gateway address here dynamically. But if you know your gateway, you can specify and manually enter it here. But I'll just do dynamic. I'm going to leave the administrative distance at 10. And we'll go ahead and click OK. So now we have a default route here. If we go to dashboard and we go to network, and we go to our routing here, we can see we have a total of 3 routes, right? We have a route which is a directly connected route to our LAN subnet out of our port 2. We have a route to my lab subnet, which is out of port 1, and then we also have a default route, which is essentially going to be an internet route, and that's also going to go out of port 1. But this one is the static one that we created. Okay, so now that we have R&R now, we have routing complete, we have NATing complete, and we have the rules complete, we could go ahead and now try and pick up a new IP address here. So if we go to network here, we go to Ethernet, we change our adapter options, we go to properties, IPv4, and we select obtain an IP address automatically. We click OK. As you can see now, we actually have internet access now. We don't have the little globe anymore. So we'll have to log back in again, but just confirm our DHCP is working. So we'll open up command prompt. We'll do ipconfig. And as you can see, we got something from that DHCP pool that we created with the correct default gateway, which is port 2. So we'll just log in again. And if we try to go out to the internet, if we go to google.com, we can see we have internet access. So we search for Fortinet. We can now see we have proper internet access. Okay, so now that we confirm that we have internet access, if we go back to our dashboard and go to network, we can now see DHCP, and we handed out one IP address, which is to that Windows machine. So good, good, good. If we go back to our policy and objects, we can review our firewall policy. And as you can see here, we now have some bytes flowing through here. We have our hit counts, and we have our last used. So again, this can be used to confirm that traffic is in fact hitting the proper rule. If we go to central SNAT and we go to our NAT rule, we can see similar results, our hit counts and our last used. If we go to login report for traffic, we can see traffic from our machine here going out to various websites out on the internet. And you can see they're all being accepted. If we double click it, we can see which rule is accepting it. So you can see here, this is the rule that allowed it, inside out, and more specifics about the source, the destination, and the data. Okay. So everything looks like it's working properly. We have proper internet access out. But as you remember, we are actually not doing any type of UTM on this traffic flow. So if I was to download any viruses on here, the firewall would not be able to block it. We are going to save that for another video, and that's all going to be under here in security profiles. And what we will be targeting in the next video is going to be antivirus, our web filter, DNS filter, application control, intrusion prevention, file filter, and SSL inspection. We'll go more into detail because these deserve a video on their own because they're so in depth. For the time being, we have R&R, we have our routing, we have our NATing, and we have our firewall rules. Once we have all of those three in place, we should have proper internet access out. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful and informational, please consider leaving a like and a comment and subscribing. In the future, I will be continuing more FortiGate videos where I will be exploring the FortiSwitch, FortiP, FortiAnalyzer, and FortiManager, and even SD-WAN for the Fortinet solution. I will also be doing videos on Palo Alto firewalls, as well as Cisco firewalls, Cisco networking, and cybersecurity in general. So please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of these videos. And as the famous Keith Parker says, thanks for watching.